Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Peter J. Redding, and today we're going to dive right into the final PCC marker, which is under ICF competency number 8, facilitates client growth. Facilitates clients' growth. So if you've been watching this 3, we've been talking about all the different things that lead up to this. This is a sequencing of behaviors that a PCC level is expected to be able to do for a client during a coaching session. And we've been asking questions, we've been having a coaching mindset, all of those kinds of things that lead up to, ultimately, I think one of the great purposes of professional coaching is to facilitate the client's growth, facilitate the client's moving forward. So welcome to the episode. I'm Peter J. Redding. I'm a Master Certified Coach, a Master Certified Trainer, have been for 25 years. Coach for Life has been accredited by the International Coaching Federation from the first time that they offered accreditation in 1999. So I've been doing this for a long time, and this is my way of giving back to the world so that you can access and understand from an insider's standpoint, if you will, what is professional coaching all about? How is it significant? What's different about it? And so hopefully these series have been supporting you to do so. So let's get right to it. Exploring Coaching Mastery, Series 3, episode number 8. And again, this is ICF, International Coaching Federation's PCC marker, facilitates the client's growth. And you'll notice that there is a 9 over here on my slide. That represents that there are 9 markers, 9 behaviors that an assessor would be looking for while they're listening to an actual coaching session by an individual that is applying for that credential at the PCC level, Professional Certified Coach. There's a lot to do today, so let's get right to it. So these are the 8 markers that we've talked about that correspond with the 8 ICF core competencies. And like I say, 1 through 7 has been building up to this one, frankly, number 8, facilitates clients' growth. Definition: partners with the client to transform learning and insight into action. Promotes client autonomy in the coaching process. Okay, so several things are happening here. We're partnering to the client to transform their learning and insights that have been happening with asking questions, listening, being present, evoking awareness on the client's part. Now, with all of that, raising the level of awareness during the coaching session, how do we translate that? How does the client take that and put it into actionable items or actionable, I need to think about this more deeply, or what have I learned? And so that's specifically what competency number 9 is all about in terms of facilitating their growth based on a higher level of consciousness. The second part of this is promoting client autonomy. We do not want the client to become dependent on me as the coach. Now, there is an incredibly, it's intimate, it's deep, it's trusting. And so there can be, if a client starts saying, I don't know if I could live life without you, Peter, I can't wait to be in our sessions every week because there's just so many things that I need to decide for myself. Those are the indicators for me personally that, whoa, this is starting to sound a bit codependent. And I need to address that from an ethical standpoint. We talked about that in some detail back in series number 2 with the ICF ethical code of ethics. So I'm going to refer you back to that. Now, we don't have time to get into that one today, but this is promoting client autonomy and self-reliance. Depending upon themselves to make sure that they are following through, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a huge part of this one as well. All right. So that's the definition. Let's get right to the first one here. 8.1, coach invites or allows the client to explore progress towards what the client wanted to accomplish in, again, this particular session, not the last 3 months, but this session. It's very specific wording here. If you ask them what progress they've made since they began with you 3 months ago, that's a great question. You'll get credit for, I think, 7.6 as it is in terms of asking an open-ended question one at a time, allowing them to answer. But you don't get credit for 8.1 because you're asking, it's too general of a question. So this one is Sally. Sally's the client. You began with wanting to accomplish, A, B, and C. Where are you? What kind of progress do you feel you've made today? In our last 30 minutes, in our last 25 minutes, in our last 50 minutes, whatever that time marker is. And stop. Don't suggest what she has progressed in. Don't tell her what she's progressed in. Ask her first. That's why it's 8.1. There's a method to the madness in how these were organized. Ask the client what kind of progress that they think they've made. Now, they may have made a lot of progress. They may have achieved that initial goal that they set out to accomplish in this session. It may be 2%. They may have changed their mind in the middle of it, and then ask them, okay, in the middle of the session, you changed your goal for the session. Have you made progress against that, or what kind of progress have you made against that? Better, open-ended question. And allow them to speak. For them to speak it out loud reinforces it in their own brain, quite literally, right? There may be new neural pathways there that haven't been exercised in a long time, and by them coming to a higher level of awareness or consciousness around XYZ topic for today, allow them to figure out what progress they've made, if any. And again, as a coach, take your Velcro fingers on. They have to make progress. They have to be They have to be complete. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're not. That is, again, allowing the client autonomy in terms of being in charge of what they do, how they do it, when they do it. Okay. 8.1. What does it sound like? I think I just shared, so what progress do you think that you've made against your objective at the beginning of the session of ABC? And stop. What it doesn't sound like is, I really want to acknowledge you for the progress that you've made against ABC. I think you've got greater clarity around step number 1. Step number 2, you have a couple of action items that came out of that. And step number 3, I think you have made a commitment in terms of what other people need to be involved with this that you wanted to do at the beginning. That is not 8.1. It may be, it may be a different competency, but it's not 8.1. That's not what it sounds like. Because now as a coach, I have offered my observations at this point in terms of what they've made in the way of progress. How does this one support the client? It reinforces their learning. It reinforces what they've learned. It makes them think back over the course of the last half an hour or 50 minutes, whatever we're at in the session, to what have they actually made progress on. And basically acknowledge themselves for that, reinforcing that within themselves. And so it solidifies it. They take ownership of what they've done, the work that they've done. 8.1, spectacular. Do not do a coaching session without it. 8.2. Oh, if you have any questions as we go along here, we may not have time today because, like we say, we have lots of different items to get into, competencies today, markers, but I will get to those afterwards in the chat box, whether it's Facebook or Zoom. So feel free to ask a question, please, as it relates to competency number 8, facilitates client's growth. All right, 8.2. Client invites the client to state or explore the client's learning in this session about themselves, the who. Okay, so again, the code word here, the who is the human being behind the role, behind the activity, beyond the responsibility or the issue at hand. The who is the ICF's code word for the whole person, right? So if I'm talking, I'll speak in I statements here. If I'm speaking about an issue or situation that I'm having to face about class scheduling, okay, that's my situation that I'm talking about perhaps in my coaching session. My coach is going to ask me about that situation. So how do you want to handle that? Who else might be involved with that? What are the issues that are tangential to this whole process that you're going through here, Peter? That's my coach, asking me that. That's the situation. Now, my coach will also ask me, so who do you want to be or who do you need to be? What have you learned about yourself during our session today that could support you? That is asking about the underneath part, the deeper part of who I am as a man, as a trainer, as a human being. Okay, the who. What does it sound like? What have you learned about yourself in our session today? Again, what is an open-ended question. It's not, have you learned anything about yourself today? That's what it does not sound like, because that's a yes or no. No. And the coach is stuck with, okay, so what, if anything, have you learned today about yourself? Much better converting it to what would it sound like. It also does not sound like, I want to acknowledge you for your learning about, bringing in your core value of connection. That's the coach sharing that observation. Again, might get credit for some other competency or some other sub-competency here, but it's not an 8.2. This one's specifically asking the client to reinforce it for themselves and bring the focus to, again, not the situation, not in this one. The next one will be, but this one is specifically to them as a person, a human being. That's 8.2. The power of this, how does this support the client? Again, is facilitating their growth, which is the overall competency that this is under. I am here as a professional coach to support my clients' growth. My clients' growth comes when they have come to a level of awareness, consciousness, and then applies that in some form or fashion to their life that is beneficial to them. Word I like to use is life-affirming for them. Does it support them to move forward in a life-affirming manner towards their goals, their aspirations, their dreams, their life purpose, etc., or not, as the case may be? So it supports the client to, again, reinforce that for themselves. Again, we keep weaving in this self-autonomy. Yeah, it's the client-centric, client-focused, client-driven, and client autonomy to do this work for themselves. This is a huge part of we talk about professional development and personal development when an individual's working with a professional coach that has the skills and knowledge and ability and the competencies to do this. This is where the rubber hits the road right here. Are you making the client do the work to figure out what they've learned, say it out loud, how does it apply to them as a human being, okay? And reinforce that through questions like this, to explore what they've learned in this session about themselves. Again, don't coach without doing this. This is like the final packaging, the final, what have we done all of this work for over the last 3 months, and particularly over the last 25 minutes, if it's a 30-minute session, for what? It's for what is for what I've learned, what I am now going to start applying. So let's get into the rest of them. So 8.3. 8.3 reads, coach invites the client to state or explore the client's learning in this session. Again, the last 25 minutes or the last 50 minutes of a half an hour or an hour session about their situation. And again, the code word here that the ICF uses is the what of what's going on. You know, what's the issue? What's the conundrum? What's the dilemma? What's the challenge? What's the issue? What have you been talking about? What do you want to talk about? That is external to the client typically, the what. Not always. It can be internal. You know, I need to talk about my sense of self-confidence. Well, okay, so that's the what of some coaching sessions, and it's kind of a borderline in terms of the who. But the what specifically would be the confidence, and I would ask them about, okay, so what have you learned about your state of self-confidence in our session today? Again, if anything, maybe they've not learned it, maybe they've skipped over it, maybe they are unconscious of coming up to some revelations, but have them think about it with an open-ended question. And again, that's what it would actually sound like. What have you learned today about your situation of maintaining your sense of self-confidence in the light of, again, whatever their context is? Being in a international group, team that has some real heavyweights in it. Let's say that's their context. What have you learned about your situation? Well, I've learned that if I prepare better ahead of time, I'm more confident. Wow. Spectacular. Awesome. And I can reinforce that and with some simple words of support. Well done. That's huge for you. What it doesn't sound like, again, is if I share as the coach what I think that they've learned about their situation. Well, I notice there's 3 things, again, that I've noticed as you're sharing, that when you prepare, blah, 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 and when you do this, blah, 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 and so on. That's not 8.3. Because I'm doing the summation. I'm doing the connecting the dots at the end. It's much more powerful for the client to do that first. Now, I'll give you self-revelation here. Is when I first started coaching, I would acknowledge them profusely for what learning I thought I heard them share during a session. And yes, that's powerful. Don't stop acknowledging the client. And what the ICF has found through massive research is have the client do this piece of the work as well first. And that's why they're marked 8.1, 8.2, 8.3. What have you noticed about your progress? What have you learned about yourself? 8.2. What have you learned about your situation? 8.3. Have them do that first. It is much more powerful for the client to walk away with that a little bit more solidified, and there's a greater sense of ownership when that happens, as opposed to the coach jumping in first. 8.3. And I think we talked about that's the significance of that. Yeah, that's how it supports the client. It reinforces it for them. 8.4. Coach invites the client to consider how they will use the new learning from this coaching session. Now, one of the amazing things that happens in a professional coaching relationship is that, yes, the specifics of that engagement, the specifics of that coaching session today, there's things that the client will move forward on, learn about, etc. And what they've learned can also be applied, I'm going to say almost always. I can't remember a situation where it's not applicable to some other part of that client's life. And so coach invites the client to consider how they will use new learning that they've just talked about now. That's why this is 8.4, by the way, right? They've talked about the learning about themselves. They've talked about the new learning about their situation. And how can you apply this to other parts of your life? So what it might sound like is, sounds like you've had some great learning today about yourself and about the situation. What other areas of life might this be applicable to for you? where you could apply this for yourself. Open-ended, not, here's what it does not sound like. Again, do you think you could apply this to any other part of your life? That's, again, a yes or no. That's a simple, the brain doesn't work as hard with a yes or no. Yes. Yeah, okay, so great. Yes. So where? And I have to come back to open it up for the client's brain to go, see, well, how could I apply this in other parts of my life? Maybe in my family situation, maybe in my relationship with my kids, maybe in a different part of my job, maybe in my own personal development. Who knows? Let their brain do the work. Let them consider, ponder, reflect. Wow, that's a really good question, Peter. And they may come up with something. And they may think for a while and they go, I probably, but I can't think of one in a moment. Okay. Would you like to take that as an inquiry? Again, it's a competency that's coming up next. To have them continue pondering that after the session. But this allows them to do that sense of deeper thought. And like I say, whatever the learning might be, I can't think of a coaching session that I've listened to or done myself that there hasn't been another area that it could be applied in. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes they're less obvious. But again, it is facilitating clients' growth. Oh, guess what? This is the main topic. We're facilitating their growth in the session, right, with me for the hour. I do hour sessions myself, or the half-an-hour sessions that you might do. And the growth continues afterwards. And so that is the benefit of, again, how it supports the client is to reinforce that and kind of take what we've been focusing on in this session, which is fairly myopic, right, very detailed, and it helps broaden it at the end to, yeah, this could help me significantly with my other relationships, or with my relationship with myself, or my whatever. Yeah, good deal. (8.5) Coach partners with the client to design post-session thinking, post-session reflection, or post-session action. What are the action steps? What do you want to do? All right, so this again brings in the sense of whole person. It's asking them, who do you want to be? How do you want to be with this new learning, with this new revelation, with this new clarity that has taken place during the course of our last, again, 25 minutes? And what's next? What's next for you? So most coaches that I know, universally, worldwide, are real comfortable with action items. They understand it. They've been involved with that for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. They've got action plans. They have to-do lists. They've got action. That one is generally, frankly, pretty easy. And the way that the action sounds back to the client is, okay, so what action items are you ready to commit to? All right, so they may have kind of touched upon different actions earlier in the session. And even if they've committed back 15 minutes ago or 25 minutes ago, yeah, that's definitely one of the things that I want to do after the session, or continue to do after the session, or initiate after the session, right? So I've heard that. I can ask my client at that stage, is that a commitment, a self-commitment that you want to take away from the session, which would be this question specifically, 8.5. And the client would go, yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to. It's so clear that this is what I need to do. Okay, super. I am still going to ask at the end of the session. All right, so there's several things that I think that you've committed to during our session. Would it be helpful for you to, okay, would it be helpful is a beginning of a yes or no question, so I'm going to stop myself. So what would you like to do now to reinforce that for yourself, your self-commitments? Okay, so what do I need to do? Okay, so I'm definitely gonna. Okay, I think there's 3 things that I committed to earlier. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Bump, bump, bump. Okay, good. I heard that. What this does not sound like is, again, me repeating it back to the client. Or here's what I think you should do next. Now, if you are a tried and true facilitator, trainer, mentor, educator, parent, authority, the tendency at this stage of the coaching session is to make assignments. Okay, so here's my assignments for you between now and the next time that we get together 2 weeks from now. That's what it does not sound like. Because I've just taken over the session and I am preempting their autonomy to make a decision for themselves in terms of what they want to do, what they remembered, etc. That's what it does not sound like. So again, ask the client. Now, so far we've only asked about the actions, the action steps. Okay, again, most of us are very comfortable with that. Most clients are actually very comfortable with that. There's a few that aren't, but 95%, 98% of the clients out there can't wait to do it. Let me hang up here, Coach. I'm ready to go out and do it. Okay, got it. What we haven't talked about is thinking and reflection. So sometimes a client is not ready to make a decision around taking an action because they don't know what action they still want to take. And not everything gets resolved in these 30 minutes or 60 minutes of coaching. This is an ongoing fluid process that typically is over the course of 3 months or 6 months or much longer. And so there's certain things that will get resolved. Yep, I know exactly what I want to do with this. Terrific. We've handled that one in terms of the action step. And there's other things that I'm still not quite sure how I want to approach looking for my next job opportunity or looking at my next higher education goal, and getting my master's degree in blah blah blah. The one with the family is still pretty thorny right now. We've got 3 generations in the house, and I have a lot of responsibility being in the middle generation of, looking after mom and dad's health and welfare and my own kids and their education. And not quite sure about how to deal with that part of it. Okay, so is there the way I would say this, what this would sound like, is there an inquiry that that you could reflect on? Again, that's a yes or no question, so I just caught myself again. So what inquiry would support you? Much better, open-ended. What inquiry might you reflect on to bring more clarity to this part of your life, this part of what's next for you? So it's basically it's an action step, if you will, if you're tied to actions. It's an action to say, yes, I'm going to take time to think. I'm going to take time to reflect. Now, once I get to know my client better, I can say, if you were to journal about this, what would the question be that you'd like to reflect upon? Ooh, that's a good one. I like that one, actually. Because now I'm bringing in what I know about my client that loves journaling, gets a lot of value out of journaling, maybe daily journaling, or when things that he or she needs to reflect upon, pulls out the journal, starts writing. Okay? It may be meditation. It may be going to guidance. It may be praying. It may be walking in nature. If I know that about my client, I can share that as part of my observation here. The next time you take a nature walk or you do yoga, is there a question that you want to bring into that meditative state? Again, yes or no, but what would you bring into your meditative state? And have them think about an inquiry that they can ponder, reflect upon between now and next time. So that's what it would sound like. Okay. Again, if you give an assignment here, I want you, and the next time that you do yoga or your morning exercise, when I know that you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do a half an hour yoga for yourself before the family gets up, I want you to reflect on what's next in your career path. That's what it does not sound like. That is not client-centric. That is not client-generative. That's not a client commitment. It sounds like homework from a mentor or from a teacher, and you're neither one of those as a professional coach. Yeah. This one is huge. This one is actually huge because this is like what some people say, the rubber hits the road. It's like, okay, so what are you going to do with that? Ooh. Now that I'm aware of it, yeah, okay, so how am I going to execute? How am I going to execute this? How am I going to integrate this? How am I going to put this into the fabric of my life? This is actually quite huge. There's some coaches that actually miss this altogether, and it's just a huge waste of a potential opportunity for the client to actually create exactly what they wanted to create for their own betterment, for their organization's betterment, for their family, for their world, frankly, if this one gets missed. Please, please, please remember 8.5. And 8.5, the other thing I'm going to say about this, it's not necessarily just a one-off. Okay, so what action steps you want to do here? And they'll say 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. And then let's get on with the rest of the coaching session. Some coaches might ask this particular question 6 different ways, 6 different times during a coaching session. And some clients need more of this than others. For example, if I'm working with a brand new client and they say, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and I say, okay, so what would be beneficial for you in terms of me supporting you in terms of time frames, number of times you're going to do it, on those kinds of questions, or not. And so the client says, yeah, no, I got this one. Yeah, I'm real clear about when I want to do it. I'll calendar it. I don't need your support here in the coaching session to do that. Okay, super. Well done. And other clients are going to say, oh yeah, well, I want to do this reflection maybe 3 times a week, maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when I do my meditation, or when I do my periodic journaling. Okay, and when would you like to start? Okay, I'll start that on Wednesday. That's the next, and go into the detail of that. So again, calibrate that by what supports the client. Ask the client what supports them first, if you don't know. If you haven't gone through this part of the process in the coaching engagement yet, in other words, it's in the early stages of maybe my 2nd or 3rd coaching session with this client, as opposed to the 12th or 14th or 20th one, which by that time I know and they know, how they process what kind of support they need during our time together and what support they don't need, right? So that's also a big piece of this one. But do not overlook this one. This is a key one. All right, let's move on. 8.6. Coach partners with the client to consider how to move forward, including resources, support, or potential barriers. So this is kind of, now that you know what you've committed to, all the self-commitments that you've taken, hopefully from self-generated ideas or options during a coaching session, as opposed to ones that I've given them, because that's, again, not coaching, but ones that they have claimed for themselves, mostly self-generated by their own internal know-how and wherewithal. We partner with the client to consider how to move forward, including resources, support, or potential barriers. So, are there resources that could support you? Again, that's a yes or no question. I tend to get to yes or no questions towards the end of the coaching session. But what resources or what support structures
do you have in place, or do you want to put into place to make sure that you're successful in completing, again, what they just talked about in 8.5 of I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to think about this, I want to think about this, I want to journal about this, okay? So how can I support the client while they're in a session with me to think through or plan what kind of support they might need to actually do those things, to actually follow through, to be successful at completing those. Once you get started with a client, this one, you don't have to explain. The first time you ask about this, most clients are going to say, what is that? What are you talking about here, Peter? Okay, so resources might be a resource buddy, or it might be a calendaring, it might be a chart that you're keeping track of on a day-to-day basis, and you tick it off, the old classic to-do list. Support might be other people that have done this that you want to talk to, or potential barriers. I don't go so much to potential barriers personally, because I don't want to really introduce them to the negative side of this whole thing. But if you ask that, are there any barriers that would prevent you from doing this? Okay, that would be the way that this might sound. So what barriers do need to be overcome, if any? What resources or support do you have in place, or that you would like to put into place to, again, remind you and so that you can be successful at the things you just committed to? All ways that this might sound like. The potential barrier one, I like to, again, this is Coach for Life, not ICF. But Coach for Life, the way our approach is to this is, what strengths do you have in your natural gifts and talents that we've established earlier? Which of those natural gifts and talents might support you in following through successfully with what you've just committed to? I like that much better in terms of strengthening, as opposed to looking for, what are the trip chords? What's going to trip you up here? That brain takes them back to, okay, all the things that prevented me perhaps from doing this earlier in life, or each time I commit to this, I don't get it done because, and then they get into a mindset of that, and that, frankly, not terribly resourceful. This is my experience, personal experience, again. But if you were to ask what are the potential barriers, you would get credit from an ICF assessor, because they'd actually be listening for that here. So your choice. Your choice. What this would not sound like, again, is if you don't ask it at all. And again, most new coaches will forget to ask this one. Once they get all the action steps and all the reflections and inquiries from the last marker, 8.5, they skip right over this one. They just think, okay, good, great. So anything else you want to talk about in the session today? No, good, goodbye. We're done. So don't skip over this one. Okay, I see a question coming up here. Yeah, I think I have time for a question or so. Let me see if I can pull that up for you. This comes from Tanya. Can the barrier question be asked at the beginning of the session instead? There's a 3.4 is also kind of a barrier question in terms of, is there any barriers that would prevent you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish in the session today? And again, I have the same answer to that one. Is I don't like asking that question. I much rather ask, what strength can you bring to bear in our session today to make sure that you accomplish what you set out to accomplish? That's 3.4 marker. This one here at 8.6 also has that barrier kind of a question. I don't like either one of them. Again, this is just a personal thing at Coach for Life. Our approach to this is much more, how can we boost the resourcefulness of the client, as opposed to have them thinking backwards to what might get in their way. Again, just a personal preference on my part, but the ICF continues to put potential barriers in there, because most people don't think in terms of what is positively going to be supportive as opposed to what the gap, what's getting in the way. So that's, yeah. And this question, no, can't be done at the front end because there's no things that have been committed to in terms of follow through or next steps. So this has to come at this point at 8.6 after it's been established what the client has committed to follow through and act upon action steps, or again, inquiries. Yeah, great question, and thank you for bringing that in, because there is the same sort of vernacular nomenclature word used in 3.4. And I'm so proud of myself that I remember the 3.4. So thank you, Tanya. Okay. Let me come back to this other screen here. How does it support the client? It supports the client to, again, reinforce that I not only have I agreed to do these things for myself, right? But I am almost I'm more sure now, more confident that I'm going to be able to follow through on these because of this question of, yeah, I can bring this resource to bear. I can bring these supports in to support me to do something that might be challenging, might be new, might be kind of hesitating because I don't want to screw it up kind of thinking. And now if I get the bolster of this support structure, this resource, this core strength that I could bring in here, I'm feeling pretty good about this. In fact, I'm even feeling better about being able to accomplish what I set out to, accomplish here. All right. Similarly, but a little bit different slant here, is 8.7. A coach partners with the client to design the best methods of accountability for themselves. Now, this is not new in terms of the ICF competencies. The accountability idea has been around since the very beginning when, we created the core competencies back in 1999. And I was on that committee. And that sense of accountability is back there. If you look at the old competency model, it's there. What's new, or what's been reinforced, is that the accountability for many, many years, for the first 15 years of the coaching profession, was how can I support you as your coach to be accountable? In other words, you want me to follow up the next time. And so some coaches love doing that because they come out of the old school of kick-ass coaching, of I'm going to kick your butt, basically, if you don't do it sort of attitude. I don't prescribe to that, frankly. I find that sort of demeaning, and again, taking some of that autonomy away from the client. So the accountability for themselves, the actual wording here and that an assessor is going to say is the coach can be part of the accountability structure. In other words, they are going to come back 2 weeks from now and likely talk about the ongoing process, learning, development of that particular area of their life. Can be part of that, but not the majority of it. In other words, or if the client says, well, yeah, can I just email you, or can I just check in with you? Yeah, you're perfectly okay to do that. And what other accountability, again, do you have in place, or do you want to put into place to assure the success of these action steps, inquiries, things that you've committed to? Accountability could be, again, it could be their calendar system. I'm going to check every night to make sure that I've done the step that I was going to do. It could be an accountability buddy outside of me as their coach. It could be their spouse. It could be a best friend. We check in with each other, and we support each other. We celebrate each other. And I find that to be quite valuable. This is the client talking now. Okay, that sounds great. So how would you incorporate your accountability buddy? I'll have a conversation with them basically every night at 8 o'clock. We just kind of check in, 5-minute check-in. Okay, super. And I'll let them know what I've committed to for the next 2 weeks. Wow, fantastic. Well done. Any other accountability structure or mechanism that you want to put into place for yourself? This goes to autonomy. This goes directly to client autonomy. Eventually, coach is going to go away because the engagement's over. The corporation has paid for 6 months or a year or 2 years of this person's development work, and a coach then finishes that assignment, that engagement. And the question that I have for all coaches that I train is, how well are you helping that client to develop their own structures after you leave? And so this is really key to start building that muscle, that self-development muscle within the individual client, to be able to do these things for themselves and rely on their own wits, their own structures, their own accountability to continue to, as they reflect, because they're going to continue to reflect after coaching, believe it or not. And now, what do they do with it? And it's a structure that you're building inside of the human being. And they start getting used to that, and they start seeing the results of that, and it's like any other kind of exercise. You start working out your muscles. First of all, they're sore. I don't remember that muscle. And then you continue working out, and then it stops being sore, and then you continue afterwards, after working with your trainer and working out, because you know that works, and you know that it supports you. Same thing here with coaching. I am helping the client to develop within themselves, within their own sense of resourcefulness, their own sense of accountability. And that is what it sounds like. And what it does not sound like is, again, most people don't even ask. They don't even ask. I'm not sure what accountability is myself, so I'm not going to ask my client that. Ask them. How do you hold yourself accountable for other commitments that you've made in your job? I tell my teammates, I write it down, I put it into my calendar, I put it into a special app that reminds me of, have I hydrated, or have I, checked in with the team members? I mean, they're doing it now somehow. How are you doing it now, and how can you apply it to today's takeaways, today's action steps? Okay. Benefit is, again, supporting them to become a better human being, a more conscious human being, a more accountable human being. It's so fundamental to human development that it's like, duh. Why wouldn't you do this? Okay. How are we doing here? Oh, we're doing great. 8.8. Coach celebrates the client's progress and learning. Now, see the sequencing of this? Remember I said you don't do this first. You do 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4 in terms of what is the client, what kind of progress have they made? 8.1. 8.2, 3, and 4 is all about the client's learning and having them articulate that first, have them ponder what they've learned, how they're about themselves, about their situation, and about how else they might apply it in their life. 8.1, 8.2, 8.4, we just talked about it. At 8.8, this is towards the tail end of typically the tail end of the conversation, coaching conversation. Coach celebrates the client's progress and learning and reflects back. And then I do not reiterate every single word that they said during 8.1, which is what progress they've made. 8.2, what they've learned about themselves, 2 and 3, 8.2 and 8.3, 8.4. But I do a quick summary. I do this clearly and succinctly and genuinely. Now, it is also an opportunity that if I notice them learning something earlier, it was like an aha moment, and they have since stopped, they've not remembered that, 25 minutes later, which is absolutely the case in many cases, because It's new information. It's passed through their brain like a flash. Whoop. And they kind of perk up in a moment back 25 minutes ago. And in the meantime, they've forgotten because it's so new. It's like they haven't retained the memory of that. So what this one sounds like is, I love the progress that you made today. I think you're brave to go into the topics that you did, showing the vulnerabilities that you did. Again, if that is all true and authentic, I don't make stuff up. So I reflect back exactly what I remember them learning or the progress that they've made succinctly. And if there's an additional point that they had an aha moment on, or I thought was a flash of brilliance, a flash of learning, I will then go into that in a little bit more detail. And so what that might sound like is, in addition to all the things that you recall and all the things that you've celebrated about yourself, there's one other thing that I would really like to acknowledge you for, and that's your uncanny ability to come to a conclusion that, whatever it was, and just share it as a statement. And I can also back off on that by saying, and I may be completely wrong here, but it sounds like that is a significant shift of mindset that you've had in the session versus the last 10 years of experience in this company or in this relationship or in this activity or in this profession. And so, well done. Super proud of you. Now, that may sound a bit parental at this stage, and a lot of that has to do with the tonality that you deliver it. Don't be parental. Don't be the authority. As an elder or as a elder statesman or as a subject matter expert in XYZ, I got to tell you that's fantastic. Don't language it that way. Just have it be all on for them. And do it genuinely for yourself. Now, every coach will do this differently and authentically for themselves. Some will have pom-poms out, woohoo! Some will do it in a very measured tone. Some will be excited and elevate their language and their pacing and their energy level in delivering this one. But the key here is be authentic, be real, and don't repeat everything that the client said. What it does not sound like is, again, okay, you did great. I think we're done for today. Anything else you want to do? Again, they skip right on over this one because they think that the client has already done all of this ahead of time. It's important for them to also hear it from another voice through their ear into their brain to reinforce what they have said earlier, and it might be like 3 or 4 minutes earlier or 25 minutes earlier if they forgot something. And let it sink in for them. Let it sink in. And do not follow it up with right. That's what it does not sound like. Now it sounds like it's parental or an overseer. And that's not the way I want to deliver this one. But I want to be genuine about, wow, such great progress today. It's just awesome to be a witness to that. Thank you for the privilege. And that's something I might actually say, because those would be my words. Yeah. Significance of this, again, is having them hear it from, again, not their superior, but to hear it from another human being and have a sense of appreciation of the work that they've done. Yeah, great work today, buddy. Well done. And be specific about things that maybe they haven't shared in 8.1, their own progress or their own learning. Yeah. Good deal. Let's move on to the final one, 8.9, and we are a couple of minutes away from ending. Whew, I'm so proud of myself. Coach partners with the client on how they want to complete this session. So, as a professional coach, I am the timekeeper. I need to keep that structure in place with my client. Like I say, I do my sessions for 1 hour. So if they are deep into point number 1 out of 3 things that they want to do at, like at 17-minute mark, then I'll say, okay, great. We have about 15, at the 15-minute mark. All right. So we have about 45 minutes remaining. Do you want to get to this one deeper, or would you like to go on to another area, another element, another facet of this? So I'm keeping time throughout, and at the end, maybe with 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. There's no magic here, but just pick a time in terms of, we have about 10 minutes remaining. You have done a spectacular job of diving into point number 1. You also talked about point number 2 and point number 3 earlier in the session when we began. How do you want to use the last 7 minutes together? And you're perfectly okay to put one of these things on the back burner. We can pick it up next time if you choose, or we can get into it now. What's your choice? What's your option? So I'm framing this as that we will end in 7 minutes, but I'm allowing my client to make the decision in terms of how. How do you want to use this time? How can you best utilize the last 7 minutes? Do you want to recap your commitments? Do you want to recap what you learned? Do you want to get into, you want to start the framework of point number 2? All up to you. Okay, so that's what it might sound like. What it does not sound like is, okay, we're done. I see our time is up. I'll see you in 2 weeks. All the best to you, and stay safe. Goodbye. That's what it does not sound like. That's not professional. So ask the client, first of all, keep track of time, first and foremost. If they are almost done at the end, and I get this question a lot from my students, can you go over? I'm a stickler for time, and I will ask the client in some cases, but rarely. I have about 10 minutes after this session that's available. Do you have 10 minutes that you might be able to, wrap this up and get clarity about what you want to take away? And it's a yes or no question. It's intentionally a yes or no question. Okay? So that's what I do for this one. What it does not sound like is, like I said, just be abrupt. Oh, I didn't realize the time was up. I've got a something at the top of the hour, hard stop. So I'm going to have to bring it to a close right now. I hope you enjoyed the session, and goodbye. That's not what it sounds like. And so if you do that, you don't get credit for this one. That's all. You just don't get credit for 8.9. Yeah. And guess what time it is? It's at the top of the hour. So that concludes the PCC Markers. The next series is going to be Series 4, and we're going to have 12 live episodes. Same time, Tuesday morning, USA Eastern, 10 to 11. We're going to discuss, we're going to demonstrate, we're going to have Q&A on the steps of the coaching engagement. So how does an engagement get started? How do you determine if they have good chemistry with the client? Doing a sample session, we'll talk about that. Coach-like conversation, what does that sound like? What kind of agreements? All of that will be included in the next 12 weeks of our live streaming of Exploring Coaching Mastery. Thank you for being here today. God bless. Namaste.